Hey beauties, welcome back to Embodied. Today's episode is such a treat because I'm joined by Meghan Telpner. She's a Toronto-based entrepreneur, presenter, best-selling author, the founder of the Academy of Culinary Nutrition, and her unique approach to business and community building was featured in Forbes. And she's also been recognized as one of Canada's top 100 female entrepreneurs. But what I love most is where she is now. Meghan is in a season of semi-retirement as a fiber artist, and she's the host of the Courageous Pivot podcast. So this conversation is truly lived wisdom, not just theory. We talk about identity evolution, the kind of pivots that choose you, and what it looks like to trust your body when you're outgrowing even the beautiful things that work. We go into grief, into liberation, into the tunnel moments where clarity isn't here yet, and the subtle, peaceful way a real yes can be felt in the body. If you're in a transition, or you can feel one whispering, this one is going to land. All right, take a breath, settle in, and let's drop into this conversation with Meghan Telpner.
Now I'm ready.
Oh, hi, Meghan.
Oh,
How are you today?
I'm great, Anne. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm so happy that you said yes to this conversation. We've met a long time ago. I don't think you remember, but I think it was 2011 or something like that. I was doing a book tour with Dr. Bill Davis, like the author of Belly.
Yes, I remember it. It was the end of October 2013, and I remember because I think I was leaving like the next day for my husband and I did what we called a pre-retirement. We went away for 4 months. And I remember we were like subletting our apartment. It was absolute chaos. But I'm like, I have Dr. Davis in my kitchen to interview him. Like, we'll make it happen. So I remember it very clearly.
Yeah. And so it was kind of the beginning of my career as a speaker. So I was opening for Julie Daniluk, who was opening for Dr. Davis. So, and we have, Julie as a friend in common, and then Lori Moore, who I didn't know until recently. And she's the one, shout out to her, who, was like, oh my goodness, it would be so good to have a conversation between you and Meghan. And so here we are.
Yeah. You just mentioned so many lovely people. Julie's one of my best friends, and Lori was such a dream when she was in my community. She was first one of our students, then became one of my coaches, and she's amazing. And I was so happy to see her name in my inbox because, these people, come and go in your life depending on where you're at and what you're doing. And I hadn't had contact with her in a while. So that was delightful. It was a delightful introduction and invitation. So thank you.
Oh, so good. I'd love to talk with you today about this whole idea of identity evolution when it comes to trusting our bodies through that process. And I would love to hear about your story. I know you've had a few transitions, a few pivots in your life, and I bet you have so many more ahead of you. I remember saying if I'm addicted to anything, is I'm addicted to almost like an acceleration of my own evolution, which sometimes, looks like letting go of beautiful things, which I think we don't talk enough about because we talk about like letting go of the things that, we really don't want anymore, that we've outgrown. But then there's this these beautiful things that we build and that we create and that we're very proud of, and they work. And then, but we know inside that it's time to, to move on. And this whole idea around trusting ourselves during those identity shifts, I'd love to kind of dive into that with you today.
Mhm.
Maybe we could start with your first pivot, like when it came to your health, because that would be more of a survival one, right? Like not so much so of a conscious,
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting in retrospect. So I've been cleaning out my studio here. I've been in this space for it'll be 20 years this year. And so I moved in here in 2006, sort of went from like university to my first apartment to putting all my stuff in storage because I was sick and moved to California to coming in here. And so up in my crawl space, I had all these boxes of photo albums from high school, summer camp, in university, sort of like I don't know when I started taking photos when I was 14 till I was like 25 and things went more digital. And that first pivot, looking back, was for my own survival. Um, Absolutely. I developed an autoimmune disease, or, you know, put the things in place that were the perfect recipe for an autoimmune disease of like stress and misalignment and a psychospiritual issue and a multitude of vaccinations to travel in Africa. Like it was the perfect storm.
How old were you when that happened?
The the vaccines were the grand finale. So I was 23 because I celebrated my 24th birthday in Africa.
Yeah.
Um, but looking back at all of that, that was like the last call. It was like, you better wake up or you are going to have a very, very painful life. Because looking back at all those photos, I was like, I was never myself. Like I wasn't in alignment. And I knew there were other things I wanted, but there's, the peer pressure of needing to fit in, which I never did. And the first half of this decade was like the ultimate social cleansing of all those people I tried to fit in the first half of my life that
Oh.
I didn't. And so that first pivot was the call of, what path am I going to go down? Am I going to follow this conventional medical path with this autoimmune disease, or am I going to start actually tuning into what my body's telling me it needs? And what it needed was to exhale. It needed some real food. It needed to slow down because my mind has always been extremely active and creative. And I've always been very hard on myself and a perfectionist and overachiever and type A and all the check boxes of modern society. We're all there. Otherwise I don't know that we would have been landed here.
Yes.
And so, yeah, that first pivot was a pivot towards actualizing who I was after the first quarter of my life. But again, like just this week, like looking back at, travel journals and God, these horrendous diary entries and like my free writing journal from grade 13 in Ontario Week, grade 13 of like stories, like there was a funeral in my brain. I'm like, what was happening? It's like I'm a joyful, loving person. And so that first pivot was really a pivot towards myself. And it got as loud and painful and aggressive and dramatic, I guess, as it needed to be to shake me awake. And I also kind of swore off at that point, I would never let it get to that again.
Hmm. And so you kind of turn this crisis or this awakening into serving others with the business that you started.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when I went into nutrition school, I was just like, oh, here it is. Here's my people. Um, I loved it. I loved going to school every day. And, it helped that there was a certain boy in the school that I had a little crush on, who ended up becoming my husband.
Oh my goodness.
And it was funny because I was dating someone else while I was in the program, and I would say to my girlfriends, like, I think I need someone like Josh, like someone like him. It took 2 years before he would date me, but it all worked out in the end. But yeah, so I wanted to create a business that was joyful, that brought people together, where I still had all these old friends that, I became like the woo-woo one of the group, and, they sort of tolerated my dietary needs, and we'd go away for the weekend and I'd bring all my own food, and I'd be the one who went to sleep at 10 o'clock while they're all still up drinking and smoking drugs. And I just didn't want to, I never wanted to participate. I never participated in that but I would sit around for it. And it got to a point where I'm like, I don't even want to witness this. It just wasn't for me. And so I started this beautiful business that grew and grew and grew and was so fun and so terrifying and joyful and excruciatingly difficult. It grew me as a person every single day. And it worked, and it was incredibly successful beyond what I could have dreamed, really, for
What was
15
your favorite
years.
part of it?
Oh gosh. I mean, I love problem solving. So there's, you run a business as it gets bigger, there's more and more problems to solve. I loved that I got to be me and create as me. And though, that rubbed some people the wrong way and they let me know in detail, it attracted really incredible people. We talk about Lori as one example. It brought in such special people who were also working to resonate on their own unique frequency as who they are. Um, I loved teaching this information. I loved learning about it. I was constantly sharing on the edge of my own knowledge. Um, I got to do it my way. I got to do it in my fun vintage outfits. I got to do it in full color. I learned how to build a really amazing team that, I no longer work with them. It's been almost 3 years and we still meet on a monthly basis as a mastermind group. This was my former employees. So there was so much that was so beautiful. I got to meet amazing people. You're one of them, and working with William Davies and or Davis, and I connected with so many people. I like there was and even still, like when I run into someone at the supermarket and they're like, "Oh my God, I did your program. It changed my life." Like, wow, what an honor to be able to be part of that in someone else's life.
Yeah. Yeah. And so from the outside looking in, like it was really impactful, really meaningful, really solid, really successful. So, like, when did you first begin to notice that you were kind of evolving beyond it? And what was that experience like?
The first whispers, I mean, I have a girlfriend who I met when I was living in Los Angeles in 2006, and we were 25, 26 years old, and she said even then that I said I was going to retire at 30, and like I didn't even know what I was doing. Like I was unemployed and unemployable. um so as my business grew, I had planned to be able to retire. I was really mindful about the finances of my company and how I was managing the earnings and all of those things. What happened was that the first half of the decade was really challenging to be working in the online space. So that wore me down.
Mhm.
Even before that, 2019, my son was 2 years old, and I was like, I can't do all these things. I had a full-time nanny taking care of my baby. Um, for the first year of his life, when he was, for 6, 7 months when he was exclusively breastfeeding, I was going back and forth from my office to breastfeed him, put him down for his nap, then I'd come back, then I'd wake up for when he was, I'd come back for when he woke up, and it was excruciatingly difficult. So in 2019, I started considering acquisition routes. Like, can I just sell this off, give it to
Mhm.
someone else? And then that path didn't align for me. And then I started looking at hiring a CEO to just run it. Just, tell me where to show up. And I'm like, there was one person in particular I really wanted to take it over, who I'd worked with in advertising. And she was like, I can't take this on. I don't want to let you down. And it was this sort of push pull. I was like, you won't let me down because I'm letting myself down. Like, you can't do worse than I am right now.
Yeah.
And that didn't work out. And then it just kind of came to a point where I hired one of my graduates to prepare meals for me and my family. Like, I wasn't cooking anymore. I was dividing my time and my attention when I was with my son and with my husband, and I wasn't sleeping, and I started feeling like I would get colds that wouldn't go away. Like it was, it was the subtle signs were becoming less and less subtle.
So that's how
And
your body was telling you, right? Almost like before the clarity was there, your body was saying, um, there's something here that you need to pay attention to.
yeah, I was, in 2019, I'd lost a lot of weight, obviously the baby weight, but I was getting smaller and smaller until I was getting bigger and bigger. It was like I was craving sugar all the time, and I just didn't have energy, and I didn't have the time. And, around sort of in the 2019, I looked at myself in photos and I was like, "Ooh, that's not me. Like, I don't look like that." And it wasn't like from a place of judgment. It was almost the feeling I just had looking at photos of myself in high school. Like, you're in there, Megan. Like, you got to come back out. And so that was sort of the first indication. And I got back on track. Like, I eliminated sugar and I started working out, and that felt really good. But then it was the deep, deep exhaustion and anxiety that was keeping me up at night. That was really like, this isn't sustainable. And ironically, like, can we even mention his name? Peter Attia. My husband was listening to a podcast of him, and I'm just sitting there. I don't remember what I was doing. I was doing something outside that was sort of crafty and creative, and I was just kind of listening with one ear. And he's talking about longevity, and I was like, if I'm continue on this path, like, I'm not going to have longevity. Like, I'm not going to be well and vibrant and healthy. Like, I'm on a very dangerous trajectory. I was 43 at the time, and like, I wasn't sleeping and didn't feel good and was sick all the time. So, those were the body signals.
And did you feel like once you decided, what do you think you had to grieve? Like, even though you knew this was the best decision for you, and making space so that whatever can come next can show up, whatever comes next to show up, what do you think you had to grieve?
What didn't I grieve? That's the question. The first thing was my employees. And that was grief and guilt. And there's still some guilt because not everyone, I mean, they're like, we meet once a month. They're like, where do we find someone to work for like Megan? Which I'm like, oh, that's generous. That's very generous and sweet. Not everyone has landed in a great place. And I feel some level of responsibility that I took away something that was working in all of their lives. That was really, really hard.
Mm-hmm.
That was, I think, the single hardest part of this, because I love them, like, truly. And when you have a company and people are willing to give their waking hours to your dream, like, I never took that for granted. And then there was no grief. I felt great. I felt liberated and amazing until I realized that I was just filling time with things that were still not right or in alignment. It was just busy and distraction. So the grief took about 2 years to actually hit. And what I was grieving was the person I had been, who woke up in the morning knowing exactly what I needed to do that day to feel successful, to feel like the day was successful, that I was of value. I missed that. I missed the proficiency of that person and the efficiency of that person.
Like the
Um,
structure and the predictability of your role,
yeah,
which was dictated by, what you had created.
yeah. The metrics were very clear.
Mm.
Um, that I grieved that. I also grieved being as motivated as I had been. That I felt like I had such a deep purpose. Like, I knew what my purpose was, and that every day I could execute on that purpose. Um, and there was a part of me that I sort of snuck up. Like, I knew that I didn't want the same visibility and prominence that I had once desired and that had been built into my company. But there was also a part of me that started to notice that I wasn't hearing from certain people anymore. Um, and not even just like there were friends or who I thought were friends that kind of like, oh, okay, well, you don't have the same reach or influence, so you're not as useful, which is, the straightest way I can say it. Um,
How who's there for what reasons, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And there was just little things, like little egometric things where I was still in this entrepreneurship group and I would, participate in these events. And it was sort of like, well, what do you do? It's like, well, here's what I did. I
Yeah.
don't really, and I'm retired. And I would say I was retired and people were like, oh, that's cute. What are you going to do next? I'm like, I don't know. Um, so that was a thing. Like, and it's still sort of, who am I now without saying what I was or what I did or what I once accomplished?
Yeah. Yeah. Before I started my business as an author and a teacher, I was a professor at the university, and it took me a very long time to stop saying that,
Yeah.
because that people could really understand, that they could fit in their, in their view of the world or their view of me. But, when you are basically your brand, or is about who you're becoming moment to moment every day, and you're going with what emerges, and you're going towards your own curiosity and exploring that like an adventure. That's really difficult to put in an elevator pitch. And it's true, you lose almost people's attention, or you lose their interest if it's not something that's relatable or clear. Yeah.
Yeah. And even now, like as I talk to you, I'm working on saying like I'm an artist and I
Yeah.
host a podcast. And I'm like, I know what that sounds like coming out of my mouth. Like, okay, good luck.
Yeah, good
you
luck.
know? Um,
That's
so
awesome.
it's
Well, I think that, when I just hearing you and knowing about you is that you're an artist in the medium of life. Like, life is the medium in which you know yourself and become as you know yourself more. And so whatever wants to unfold, like, it's such an incredible, it takes a lot of courage and a lot of trust to live like that. And I think that we're asked to live like that more and more nowadays because of this like speeding up of everything and acceleration that's happening. If we hold on to an identity too long,
yeah,
it hurts.
yeah, yeah. It'll make you sick.
Mm-hmm.
It's wearing a mask that doesn't fit. And the calling that I think we're all experiencing, why you're doing the work you're doing, why I'm doing the work I'm doing, is that there is a grand, whatever language you want to use, a universal awakening, a calling back to ourselves, um, back to becoming who we are and who we are moving into. And, I find it interesting when certain phrases become popularized. And one that I keep hearing over and over is touch grass, like go calm down,
Oh, I
go
love
touch grass. And I'm like that being connected with nature and our birthright of creativity is touching the grass, is reconnecting. And it's the antidote to the pace of technology.
I agree.
And,
I
it's so interesting with this AI and everyone's like, we're going to have robots doing our laundry and doing the dishes. And I'm like, no, no, no. Oh, it turns out we're going to use technology to do all the things we love, all the creative work, writing books and writing music and poetry and letters. And we're still left doing the laundry and the dishes.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, taking all that magic and that grassy, natural, like embodied experience of being an artist away. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. I
Well,
love that the touching grass, because it's like touching your own nature and staying really close to what is
yeah.
true in this moment.
Yeah. I recently spoke to someone for my podcast who had I'd met her. She'd been one of my students. Again, they're the best people. And she'd been a producer with CTV in Canada, in Montreal specifically. And she said around the 2016 US election, she swore off the news. And then it was all media, including movies, including songs with lyrics, to move into like an intuitive sovereignty.
Ooh.
And I just had this conversation with her yesterday, so it's top of mind for me. Um, and something she'd said was when you can drown out this divisive rhetoric, this influx of not just the political landscape and the sides we're supposed to be on and what that means about us, but more so when you start actually tuning into yourself, you start to see how you're reborn every other minute.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is what a lot of us are being called to, which is why things feel like it's moving so quickly, because we're actually aligning quicker than we ever have. And we now have the freedom and capacity to do so.
Yeah. We have the opportunity and the capacity to do that. And if we say yes to it, and I love that example of just cutting all the noise out because what's left is that capacity. It's
Mm-hmm.
not just like, oh, a skill that we have. It's actually the makeup of who we are is just unfolding as a creative being.
Yeah.
And so, oh my goodness, it's so delicious when you get to know yourself as that. So for you, that identity is it's no longer like, okay, from this role to that role to that role and that thing that I do, but more I'm that creative
Yeah.
movement and expansion.
My
And
husband, he's always like, whenever I've always done creative things, always. Like it's never been something I didn't do. It was just something like, I sewed my son's Halloween costumes, or I made some throw pillows, or I was crocheting a sweater. There's always been something. And he would always say to me, "You're an artist." And having his support, like beyond supportive of me doing this, is also such a blessing that he loves that I'm now embracing this. And he says I'm also like much nicer to be around. Like that I'm so much less stressed than I was when I was running the full corporation. And obviously not everyone can do that. And I think anyone can do it. You just have
Mhm.
to plan for it and work for it.
Yeah, and I think once we make a decision like that to listen and to answer that call or whatever, we are supported. And it might not look like what we want it to look like, but in the end, I really believe that we are supported and
Mhm.
there is resources um, because it wouldn't be calling so profoundly from within if it wasn't a path of support.
No.
I
It's
could be
so
naive saying that, but I feel strongly about it.
yeah. Yeah. And that's ultimately what um I'm working to. I don't want to use the word emanate because it's like it's not really with intention, but to embody the living permission slip um, of how you can live and lead from the heart, not in a way that makes you, a people pleaser or soft. Because I think you're like, oh, I'm, in the heart. No, it's more of living with decisiveness and confidence from the root of your soul, like knowing what are absolute yeses and what are absolute nos. Um, and and it takes bravery to do it. So when you can, free yourself, liberate yourself from the fear we're inundated with. Like as we're recording this, the Olympics just ended and I was watching with my son. We'd watch, he likes to watch the hockey and some of the sports, but it's a government funded network and every other ad is during the times of economic uncertainty, we're doing this, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, how many times are Canadians now listening to this message that we are in economic uncertainty?
Yeah.
We heard them. My son can recite this. I was like, just so you know, my dear, we have no economic uncertainty. We're
Yeah.
not choosing that.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
it's this idea that it takes a lot to step away from that message. And not just that one insane message, but the message of what life should be and what it means to be successful or efficient or productive or all of that. Like that requires an unlearning. And the easiest way to unlearn it is when you can feel into your body in any situation, and it will tell you everything you need to know.
Yeah. So you've learned to decode how your soul speaks to you through your own body so that you're able to use it as a compass in moments of decisions.
Yes. However, it doesn't make it easier. I'm still like, seriously, like I have to pivot again. Like I was just working, like it doesn't give me less resistance, but I've also learned to trust it. But there is like I'm not a pioneer. I don't want an adventure. Like everyone's like, our souls asked to be here for like, what a time to be alive. I'm like, my soul really would like to be at the beach, sipping a coconut and reading a good trashy novel. Like that's where my soul is wired to be. But
Of it.
it's not, because that's not my life. If, it would be my life if that were really what it was supposed to be. So I feel it and I also resist it. It's just learning that, you know what, this is only going to get harder and louder and more painful the more you resist it. So either do it now and have less drama, or, go back to the old pattern of waiting for all the drama.
Yeah. Like, what does a yes feel like for you in your body?
It's just peaceful.
Mm.
It's so subtle. It's almost like the non-feeling is what the yes is in a lot of ways.
Oh, I love that.
It's that I know I'll sleep at night. I know. And, it's funny because now with my art, I have dreams. I dream about art, and I do wake up in the night. Sometimes thinking about like, oh, what if I did that? But it's like, it's a joyful way to be up in the night because I'm also 46. So my sleep patterns are shifting a little, which we're working on.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's more that the no's become more and more clear.
How do they feel? The
It's
no.
a constriction. It's a instant, and I have less tolerance for it. So an instant overwhelm, which sometimes the no's are still things that have to happen. The no's are, a parent's health challenge. Like I feel that as a no. Like, no, I don't want that to happen. I
Yeah, yeah.
don't want, an aging parent to be unwell, or um but it's, so I know the negatives in my body, and it's then adapting to the tools, because some things are no's that you can't avoid. Like that's life. When it's up to me, I feel the constriction, I feel the shallow breathing. Um, I can feel my digestion change because that's my weak link.
Uh,
And then I'm able to extricate myself somewhat, breathe, like literally breathe, like whether it's the box breath or whatever breathing, but I go into like I practice coherence to kind of gain some space, move out of the fear center and into where I can think critically and constructively, and go for a walk and try and leave things um out of my mind so that the solutions can actually drop in.
mm. Yeah. So more allowing than trying to make happen.
Yeah. Which,
Inviting and allowing it to show up, to emerge as insight, as opposed to, I'm going to find this solution
yeah.
thought and I'm going to work hard at this. Yes. So different.
It's
So
completely
different.
different, and it's completely counter to how I've always operated, because I know I'm smart, I can figure things out. Um, I'm impatient. So my I don't want to say my instinct, but my automatic reaction or reply or response to these things is like, okay, let me just figure this out. I will hammer this nail until it's fully secure and I've solved this. And I'm learning every single day that that doesn't work, and it doesn't work anymore. And it probably never worked. But I just have less tolerance for it not working.
Yeah. It's a very different way of making things happen. And it takes a little while to trust and to get used to it because it is, like you said, so different than how we are modeled in pretty much every area of our lives. Like it's
Yeah.
not taught in school to unfold as opposed to make happen, We're taught to make things happen.
Yeah. And
That's
in
for
work too. And it started in university where I realized like I could wait till the last minute to do this thing, or I do it now and then I have the freedom. Um, and
Mhm.
then in work, I'm like, okay, I could, which I often did, spent the first hour like just office hopping and, in Yiddish, we call it kibitzing, like having a chit chat with everyone, just having the kibitz and then settling in. But then I'd be at work an hour later. I was like, or I sit down, I get it done. I'm here, everyone sees my face, and then I can go home. Um, and it's that discipline of like, okay, let's solve this problem on this timeline and be done with it. But when it's your own scope of your whole life, you don't get to choose the timeline.
Yes, exactly. So that requires a whole different level of trust.
Yeah, and it's so annoying.
Yay. So, um, what would you say, like, for someone who's going through a transition, like, what would be, maybe two or three little things that they could do to allow that process to happen with the least pain and suffering as possible?
Oh boy. Um,
Or what works for you, right?
yeah, I mean, I'd say that resisting it when you feel the call is going to be the primary source of all your pain and suffering. That resisting what is and resisting the inevitability of change will create and be at the root of our suffering. So finding a way to accept that things will be different. And one of the things too is that when you need to change, when something needs to change, when you need to, end a relationship or move on from a job or move on from a city or, whatever that shift is, it's very, very easy to focus on all the things you're going to lose, all the things you'll miss. And remembering, everyone write this down, the unknown is the safe place. So if you can remember that it's in the unknown that there is the infinite possibility, and that what is in that unknown void after the change or transition, you cannot imagine it because of who you are today as you approach that change. I don't know how else to make this make sense, but
So there's a period of no thing, or like there's a period of, I don't know where I'm going, but I also have to let go of what's there.
yeah, it's that liminal
Mhm,
space, that space
mhm.
in between. And the thing that happens when you can, acknowledge and grieve what you're losing, because that's very real. Um, but that you can acknowledge that in that liminal phase is often the hardest work of trust. Um, knowing you have to be in it. The only way is through.
Yep.
Let me throw down as many cliches as I can here. The only way is through. And the reason you can't imagine what's on the other side and all the blessings and all the gifts is because you're not the person yet who's going to be capable of receiving them.
Leaving them. Yeah. You might not even be able to perceive them as gifts right now.
Exactly. And if you
Mhm.
think about, like, we're often conditioned, especially in business, like, what's your 5-year plan? The thing about a 5-year plan is that you and me today, we're speaking. I mentioned I'm 46 and a half. That half matters. Um, I'm 46. I can put together a 5-year plan of how I want the next 5 years to unfold. But I can guarantee and promise you that what is most important to me that I think I'm going to want in 5 years is not going to be what's relevant when I'm 51 years old.
Mhm.
It might get me on the path, which is wonderful,
Yeah.
and it might head me in a certain direction, but we can't be over attached to a certain outcome or we are going to be selling ourselves short because of every pivot that will come in our lives,
Yeah.
every, tunnel we are going to walk through to get to the next point of light is going to transform us. So what ends up at the end of that 5-year journey, we today can't even conceptualize. because we are not the person who will experience it or be open to receiving it.
Oh, I love that so much because it takes a lot of pressure off too to have it all figured out.
Yeah.
It's like I can actually, yeah, just be present and let myself be surprised by what life has to bring. And because the controlling is tiring.
It's exhausting. And I
Mm,
think a big part in the other part you asked about how to reduce the pain and suffering. Sometimes it's the pain and suffering that's going to do the work for you. So you can't always avoid it. And I think that there's also can be a lot of value in holding it close to your chest, holding it in your heart. Doesn't need to be advertised. It doesn't have to be like, if your partner's part of this change, obviously you have to communicate with your partner. But if this is something internal that you're navigating, share that. But you don't always have to share where you envision it going. I think a big part of it is just tuning in and being able to make those decisions one decision at a time, moment by moment, and gathering the evidence that you're on the right track. And the evidence could be as simple as, you know, noticing that you wake up on a Monday morning and you no longer have those knots in your stomach. Or it could be, I love synchronicities. I experience them every single day, things that are just, wild beyond coincidence. Make note of those things. To me, those are the little winks that you're on the right track. So if you look for clues, you're on the right track, you'll find the clues, you'll see them. And it's like, oh, well, you're putting meaning in things. So what? Let you put meaning in things that helps you in a beneficial way. That's great.
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
placebo belief works too. So, yeah. And I think that, sometimes like it's going to be hard. If it weren't hard, if these transitions weren't hard and didn't involve some level of suffering, everyone would be living in full alignment of their soul. And also, even if and when you are feeling like you're in alignment, there are still hard things to do and be and experience. It doesn't mean it's, you're riding the unicorn through the rainbows every day. Um,
Yeah.
you just gain trust that like, okay, I'm in another, I think of it as the tunnel, that you're entering the tunnel and just trusting that you will get to the light.
Yeah. I'm in the tunnel and I'm not supposed to have clarity right now. So if I try to get clarity, it won't go well and it won't feel good.
Yeah.
So surrender to the
Yeah.
not knowing. But when they come often, you're like, well, I was in that tunnel last month, or I was in that tunnel, you know,
And,
just
some don't confuse the tunnel for a poor night's sleep too. Like sometimes you just need a little rest.
advice. Very good advice. Yes.
Like sometimes you just need a rest. And I don't think it's that you use the word supposed to, like I'm not supposed to have clarity. And I think
Uh-huh.
it's more that it's not a should or it's just, I don't need to have clarity right now. Or I'm just I'm not going to have clarity, but I also know this is what needs to happen right now.
Yeah. I'm in the right place.
But, I never underestimate the value of a good night's rest.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much, Megan. It was so, so nice to talk to you. I want to ask you one last question.
Yeah.
Where would you say your edge is right now? Like, where do you find yourself? Like, at the on your own cliff, maybe. Like, what's exciting and what's unknown, and what are you moving through right now?
Oh boy. Everything always all at once. I mean, it's interesting. I'm doing my podcast, The Courageous Pivot, and I put together this whole plan to monetize it and create like a membership and blah blah blah. And we had the whole plan and we had graphics. Like I did all of it. And then every day I wake up being with like almost like a recheck. And I said to my sister, I'm like, why are we going to do this? Like, why am I going to become another content generating machine?
Yeah.
And Jen is my assistant. She's absolutely amazing. And she stayed with me. I kept her on, because of the number of hats she was going to be able to wear for this unknown vision I had. And she's come along with me and she's like, I'll figure it out. We can figure it out. And then every pivot, she's right by my side for it. The biggest challenge I face, the cliff I'm on right now, is not getting sucked into old habits because it's what I know, what I can do, in that I know I could create this membership and I could make it super successful and it can generate revenue and people will love it and I'll deliver value. And also I don't want to. And that's enough not to. So that's one edge that I am constantly having to check and actually step back from, like not leap into that void again.
Yeah.
But I have started weaving, doing tapestry weaving, and I have not, and
Interesting metaphor.
What's that?
It's a beautiful metaphor, the weaving, and of how everything you described during our conversation.
I'll tell you something really interesting about this. Is about 7 or 8 years ago, I bought this beautiful weaving that I saw on Etsy that I loved. And my husband and I this summer will be celebrating our 13, oh God, I always bug him. Our 14th wedding anniversary. For our 10th anniversary, I commissioned this beautiful weaving that hangs over our fireplace. And in 2023, I went on a holiday, and usually I come back from a holiday and I'm like ready to work. I'm like ready to get back to it. And I came back and the first thing I did was book a weaving workshop. And then, 3 or 4 weeks later was when I decided to shut down my business. The day after our last gathering as a company, we did a whole day event together. I had this weaving workshop. It's woven in and out of my life forever. My uncle, when I was 8 years old, my uncle passed away when I was very young, when he was very young, but he'd given me a loom.
Oh my goodness.
So anyway,
yeah.
At the end of the summer of 2025, I ordered a whole bunch of yarn and I was like, I'm going to weave. It's time to start. And so I'm like, I keep looking over there because I hung everything yesterday in my studio, and there's one right behind me if anyone's watching this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So pretty.
I'm going to start selling my artwork, and that is terrifying.
Yeah.
And it's all of it. Like, that's been so confronting, is starting something brand new. And also reminds me of when I started in nutrition, when I wanted to be on every email list, wanted to go to every show. I'm like going to all these, like, I keep calling them yarn fests, but like various workshops about, the raising sheep in Canada and ethical farming of wool. And like, I'm learning all of this, and local suppliers and vendors, and like applying all my core values to what I'm now creating, but starting something brand new. And I'm like, is that good? No one's going to look at it and be like, Meghan, get back in the kitchen. You shouldn't be making art. And I don't mean like get back in the kitchen in like the traditional sense, but like that's what I did. I don't think I even mentioned that I ran a cooking school. So yeah, that's the edge I'm on, which is terrifying. And I'm also trusting, because the act of weaving, we've talked about how fast time's going. And when I weave, when I'm sitting at my loom, I just like saying things like, when I'm sitting at my loom weaving, time takes on an entirely different experience, where I'll be weaving and I'll look at my clock and be like, oh my God, only an hour has passed. I still get another 2 hours here doing this.
Gosh.
And I haven't experienced that. Like, the only time really slows down is when I'm meditating. I'm like, really? That's been 2 minutes? I swear that was 30.
Yep.
But yeah, so it's again, like, this is a deep, deep trust and fear, because, I go to these art shows, and I went last summer when I'd ordered my wool I was at the cottage, on our way home, there was like a art and craft show in some small town, and we stopped, and like, it was bad art. Like, it was really bad. But I was like, look at all these people. Like, they are the bravest people I know, creating art and setting up these tents and hanging their art and standing in front of this art to be not necessarily like judged, I don't know, but to be like, their art is being evaluated by every set of eyes that lands on it. Like, that is brave. That's courageous. I don't know if I have that in me. Even though I hope that people don't look at me like that is bad art and my art, but art is in the eye of the beholder, and someone loves, there's something for everyone.
Yes.
So that's my edge.
Oh, I love that so much. That feels so juicy and exciting. And like you said, it's a little terrifying, but wow, so spacious. There's lots of opening, and just the fact that you're embarking into something completely new. We talked earlier about like, I'm not going to live healthy and long enough to get to my old age if I don't change things. This is life-giving. This is longevity to stay so excited and at the edge of the new. So I think that's going to be really inspiring for people to hear that and kind of give them permission to maybe take that leap. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I appreciate your courage because, you show us how to do it.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm not looking for validation, but you just gave me a little validation.
It feels good. Aw. Well, thank you so much. Thanks so much for being in conversation with me today, for sharing yourself so authentically and openly. You can really feel that, it's your heart talking, and that's contagious. And so like, it's an embodied experience for me to just be in your, with you today. So thank you for that.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thanks for hosting me. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Hey, thank you for listening. There can be a lot of noise and inauthenticity on the spiritual path. I help spiritual seekers experience embodied spirituality. To learn how, visit my website at bérubé.com and click on the Start Here page. Oh, and subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. Until next time, be well.
On the street, they say that you don't care about me anymore, but it's in the way they walk, in the way they talk. I don't believe a thing, I don't believe a thing they say. I love you anyway, anytime, any place. You mean the world to me, you mean everything to me. That's why I say